Introduction to an exposition with practical observations upon the Book of Ruth. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. An exposition with practical observations upon the Book of Ruth by Matthew Henry. This short history of the domestic affairs of one particular family fitly follows the Book of Judges, the events related here happening in the days of the Judges, and fitly goes before the books of Samuel, because in the close it introduces David, yet the Jews in their Bibles separate it from both and make it one of the 5 Megilloth, or volumes, which they put together towards the latter end. In this order, Solomon's Song, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, and Esther. It is probable that Samuel was the penman of it. It relates not miracles or laws, wars or victories, or the revolutions of states, but the afflictions first, and afterward the comfort of Naomi, the conversion first, and afterward the preferment of Ruth. Many such events have happened, which perhaps we may think as well worthy to be recorded, but these God saw fit to transmit the knowledge of to us, and even common historians think they have liberty to choose their subject. The design of this book is, first, to lead to providence, to show us how conversant it is about our private concerns, and to teach us in them all to have an eye to it, acknowledging God in all our ways and in all events that concern us. See 1 Samuel 2, verses 7 and 8, Psalm 113, verses 7 to 9. Second, to lead to Christ, who descended from Ruth, and part of whose genealogy concludes the book, from whence it is fetched into Matthew chapter 1. In the conversion of Ruth the Moabitess, and the bringing of her into the pedigree of the Messiah, we have a type of the calling of the Gentiles, in due time, into the fellowship of Christ Jesus our Lord. The afflictions of Naomi and Ruth we have an account of, chapter 1, instances of their industry and humility, chapter 2, the bringing of them into an alliance with Boaz, chapter 3, and their happy settlement thereby, chapter 4. And let us remember the scene is laid in Bethlehem, the city where our Redeemer was born. Chapter 1, Before Christ, 1312 BC. Chapter 1. In this chapter we have Naomi's afflictions, first, as a distressed housekeeper forced by famine to remove into the land of Moab, verses 1 and 2. Second, as a mournful widow and mother bewailing the death of her husband and her 2 sons, verses 3 to 5. Third, as a careful mother-in-law desirous to be kind to her 2 daughters, but at a loss how to be so when she returns to her own country, verses 6 to 13. Orpah she parts with in sorrow, verse 14. Ruth she takes with her in fear, verses 15 to 18. Fourth, as a poor woman sent back to the place of her first settlement to be supported by the kindness of her friends, verses 19 to 22. All these things were melancholy and seemed against her, and yet all were working for good. Verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. Verse 2. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab, and continued there. Verse 3. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. Verse 4. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. Verse 5. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them, and the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. The first words give all the date we have of this story. It was in the days when the judges ruled, verse 1, not in those disorderly times when there was no king in Israel. But under which of the judges these things happened we are not told, and the conjectures of the learned are very uncertain. It must be toward the beginning of the judges' time, for Boaz, who married Ruth, was born of Rahab, who received the spies in Joshua's time. Some think it was in the days of Ehud, others of Deborah. The learned Bishop Patrick inclines to think it was in the days of Gideon, because in his days only we read of a famine by the Midianites' invasion, Judges 6, verses 3 and 4. While the judges were ruling, some one city and some another, Providence takes particular cognizance of Bethlehem, and has an eye to a king, to Messiah himself, who should descend from 2 Gentile mothers, Rahab and Ruth. Here is first a famine in the land of Canaan, that land flowing with milk and honey. This was one of the judgments which God had threatened to bring upon them for their sins, Leviticus 26, verses 19 and 20. He has many arrows in his quiver. In the days of the judges they were oppressed by their enemies, and when by that judgment they were not reformed, God tried this, for when he judges he will overcome. When the land had rest, yet it had not plenty. Even in Bethlehem, which signifies the house of bread, there was scarcity. A fruitful land is turned into barrenness, to correct and restrain the luxury and wantonness of them that dwell therein. Second, an account of one particular family distressed in the famine. It is that of Elimelech. His name signifies, "My God, a king," agreeable to the state of Israel when the judges ruled, for the Lord was their king, and comfortable to him and his family in their affliction, that God was theirs, and that he reigns forever. His wife was Naomi, which signifies, "My amiable or pleasant one," but his sons' names were Mahlon and Chilion, sickness and consumption, perhaps because weakly children, and not likely to be long-lived. Such are the productions of our pleasant things, weak and infirm, fading and dying. Third, the removal of this family from Bethlehem into the country of Moab, on the other side of Jordan, for subsistence because of the famine, verses 1 and 2. It seems there was plenty in the country of Moab, when there was scarcity of bread in the land of Israel. Common gifts of providence are often bestowed in greater plenty upon those that are strangers to God than upon those that know and worship him. Moab is at ease from his youth, while Israel is emptied from vessel to vessel, Jeremiah 48, verse 11, not because God loves Moabites better, but because they have their portion in this life. Thither Elimelech goes, not to settle forever, but to sojourn for a time during the dearth, as Abraham, on the like occasion, went into Egypt, and Isaac into the land of the Philistines. Now here, 1. Elimelech's care to provide for his family, and his taking his wife and children with him, were, without doubt, commendable. If any provide not for his own, he hath denied the faith, 1 Timothy 5, verse 8. When he was in his straits, he did not forsake his house, go seek his fortune himself, and leave his wife and children to shift for their own maintenance, but, as became a tender husband and a loving father, where he went, he took them with him, not as the ostrich, Job 39, verse 16. But, 2. I see not how his removal into the country of Moab upon this occasion could be justified. Abraham and Isaac were only sojourners in Canaan, and it was agreeable to their condition to remove, but the seed of Israel were now fixed, and ought not to remove into the territories of the heathen. What reason had Elimelech to go, more than any of his neighbors? If by any ill husbandry he had wasted his patrimony, and sold his land, or mortgaged it, as it should seem, chapter 4, verse 3 and 4, which brought him into a more necessitous condition than others, the law of God had obliged his neighbors to relieve him, Leviticus 25, verse 35. But that was not his case, for he went out full, verse 21. By those who tarried at home it appears that the famine was not so extreme, but that there was sufficient to keep life and soul together, and his charge was but small, only 2 sons. But if he could not be content with the short allowance that his neighbors took up with, and in the day of famine could not be satisfied unless he kept as plentiful a table as he had done formerly, if he could not live in hope that there would come years of plenty again in due time, or could not with patience wait for these years, it was his fault, and he did by it dishonor God and the good land he had given them, weaken the hands of his brethren, with whom he should have been willing to take his lot, and set an ill example to others. If all should do as he did, Canaan would be dispeopled. Note, it is an evidence of a discontented, distrustful, unstable spirit to be weary of the place in which God hath set us, and to be for leaving it immediately whenever we meet with any uneasiness or inconvenience in it. It is folly to think of escaping that cross which, being laid in our way, we ought to take up. It is our wisdom to make the blessed of that which is, for it is seldom that changing our place is mending it. Or, if he would remove, why to the country of Moab? If he had made inquiry, it is probable he would have found plenty in some of the tribes of Israel, those, for instance, on the other side Jordan, that bordered on the land of Moab. If he had that zeal for God and his worship, and that affection for his brethren which became an Israelite, he would not have persuaded himself so easily to go to sojourn among Moabites. 4th, the marriage of his 2 sons to 2 of the daughters of Moab after his death, verse 4. All agree that this was ill done. The Chaldee says they transgressed the decree of the word of the Lord in taking strange wives. If they would not stay unmarried till their return to the land of Israel, they were not so far off but that they might have fetched them wives from thence. Little did Elimelech think, when he went to sojourn in Moab, that ever his sons should thus join in affinity with Moabites. But those that bring young people into bad acquaintance, and take them out of the way of public ordinances, though they may think them well principled, and armed against temptation, know not what they do, or what will be the end thereof. It does not appear that the women they married were proselyted to the Jewish religion, for Orpah is said to return to her gods. Verse 15, the gods of Moab were still hers. It is a groundless tradition of the Jews that Ruth was the daughter of Eglon, king of Moab, yet the Chaldee paraphrast inserts it. But this and the other tradition, which he inserts likewise, cannot agree, that Boaz, who married Ruth, was the same with Isban, who judged Israel 200 years after Eglon's death. Judges 12. Fifth, the death of Elimelech and his 2 sons, and the disconsolate condition Naomi was thereby reduced to. Her husband died, verse 3, and her 2 sons, verse 5, soon after their marriage, and the Chaldee says their days were shortened, because they transgressed the law in marrying strange wives. See here, 1, that wherever we go we cannot outrun death, whose fatal arrows fly in all places. 2, that we cannot expect to prosper when we go out of the way of our duty. He that will save his life by any indirect courses shall lose it. 3. That death, when it comes into a family, often makes breach upon breach. One is taken away to prepare another to follow soon after. One is taken away, and that affliction is not duly improved, and therefore God sends another of the same kind. When Naomi had lost her husband, she took so much the more complacency, and put so much the more confidence in her sons. Under the shadow of those surviving comforts, she thinks she shall live among the heathen. And exceedingly glad she was of these gourds, but behold, they wither presently, green and growing up in the morning, cut down and dried up before night, buried soon after they were married, for neither of them left any children. So uncertain and transient are all our enjoyments here. It is therefore our wisdom to make sure of those comforts that will be made sure, and which death cannot rob us of. But how desolate was the condition, and how disconsolate the spirit of poor Naomi, when the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. When these 2 things come upon her in a moment, come upon her in their perfection, by whom shall she be comforted? Loss of children and widowhood. Isaiah 47 verse 9, chapter 51 verse 12. It is of God alone who has wherewithal to comfort those that are cast down. Verse 6. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Verse 7. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. Verse 8. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. Verse 9. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. Verse 10. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. Verse 11. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Verse 12. Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have an husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons. Verse 13. Would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. Verse 14. And they lifted up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. Verse 15. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. Verse 16. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Verse 17. Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. Verse 18. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. See here, first, the good affection Naomi bore to the land of Israel, verse 6. Though she could not stay in it while the famine lasted, she would not stay out of it when the famine ceased. Though the country of Moab had afforded her shelter and supply in time of need, yet she did not intend it should be her rest forever. No land should be that, but the holy land in which the sanctuary of God was, of which he had said, This is my rest forever. Observe 1. God at last returned in mercy to his people, for though he contend long, he will not contend always. As the judgment of oppression, under which they often groaned in the time of the judges, still came to an end, after a while, when God had raised them up a deliverer, so here the judgment of famine, at length God graciously visited his people in giving them bread. Plenty is God's gift, and it is his visitation which, by bread, the staff of life, holds our souls in life. Though this mercy be the more striking when it comes after famine, yet if we have constantly enjoyed it, and never knew what famine meant, we are not to think it the less valuable. 2. Naomi then returned in duty to her people. She had often inquired of their state, what harvests they had, and how the markets went, and still the tidings were discouraging. But like the prophet's servant, who having looked 7 times and seen no sign of rain, at length discerned a cloud no bigger than a man's hand, which soon overspread the heavens, so Naomi at last had good news brought her of plenty in Bethlehem, and then she can think of no other than returning thither again. Her new alliances in the country of Moab could not make her forget her relation to the land of Israel. Note, though there be a reason for our being in bad places, yet when the reason ceases, we must by no means continue in them. Forced absence from God's ordinances and forced presence with wicked people are great afflictions, but when the force ceases, and it is continued of choice, then it becomes a great sin. It should seem she began to think of returning immediately upon the death of her 2 sons. First, because she looked upon that affliction to be a judgment upon her family for lingering in the country of Moab, and hearing this to be the voice of the rod, and of him that appointed it, she obeys and returns. Had she returned upon the death of her husband, perhaps she might have saved the life of her sons, but when God judgeth, he will overcome, and if one affliction prevail not to awaken us to a sight and sense of sin and duty, another shall. When death comes into a family, it ought to be improved for the reforming of what is amiss in the family. When relations are taken away from us, we are put upon inquiry whether, in some instance or other, we are not out of the way of our duty, that we may return to it. God calls our sins to remembrance when he slays a son, 1 Kings 17 verse 18. And if he thus hedge up our way with thorns, it is that he may oblige us to say, we will go and return to our first husband, as Naomi here to her country, Hosea 2 verse 7. Second, because the land of Moab was now become a melancholy place to her. It is with little pleasure that she can breathe in that air in which her husband and sons had expired, or go on that ground in which they lay buried out of her sight, but not out of her thoughts. Now she will go to Canaan again. Thus God takes away from us the comforts we stay ourselves too much upon, and solace ourselves too much in, here in the land of our sojourning, that we may think more of our home in the other world, and by faith and hope may hasten towards it. Earth is embittered to us, that heaven may be endeared. Second, the good affection which her daughters-in-law, and one of them especially, bore to her, and her generous return of their good affection. 1. They were both so kind as to accompany her, some part of the way at least, when she returned towards the land of Judah. Her 2 daughters-in-law did not go about to persuade her to continue in the land of Moab, but if she was resolved to go home, would pay her all possible civility and respect at parting, and this was one instance of it. They would bring her on her way, at least, to the utmost limits of their country, and help to carry her luggage as far as they went, for it does not appear she had any servant to attend her. Verse 7. By this we see both that Naomi, as became an Israelite, had been very kind and obliging to them, and had won their love, in which she is an example to all mothers-in-law, and that Orpah and Ruth had a just sense of her kindness, for they were willing to return it thus far. It was a sign they had dwelt together in unity, though they were dead, by whom the relationship between them came. Though they retained an affection to the gods of Moab, verse 15, and Naomi was still faithful to the God of Israel, yet that was no hindrance to either side from love and kindness, and all the good offices that the relation required. Mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law are too often at variance, Matthew 10, verse 35, and therefore it is the more commendable if they live in love. Let all in that relation aim at the praise of doing so. 2. When they had gone a little way with her, Naomi, with a great deal of affection, urged them to go back, verses 8 and 9, return each to her mother's house. When they were dislodged by a sad providence from the house of their husbands, it was a mercy to them that they had their parents yet living, that they had their houses to go to, where they might be welcome and easy, and were not turned out to the wide world. Naomi suggests that their own mothers would be more agreeable to them than a mother-in-law, especially when their own mothers had houses, and their mother-in-law was not sure she had a place to lay her head in, which she could call her own. She dismisses them, first, with commendation. That is a debt owing to those who have conducted themselves well in any relation. They ought to have the praise of it. Ye have dealt kindly with the dead and with me. That is, you were good wives to your husbands that are gone, and have been good daughters to me, and not wanting to your duty in either relation. Note, when we and our relations are parting, by death or otherwise, it is very comfortable, if we have both their testimony and the testimony of our own consciences for us, that while we were together, we carefully endeavoured to do our duty in the relation. This will help to allay the bitterness of parting, and while we are together, we should labour so to conduct ourselves as that when we part, we may not have cause to reflect with regret upon our miscarriages in the relationship. Second, with prayer. It is very proper for friends, when they part, to part with prayer. She sends them home with her blessing, and the blessing of a mother-in-law is not to be slighted. In this blessing she twice mentions the name Jehovah, Israel's God, and the only true God, that she might direct her daughters to look up to him as the only fountain of all good. To him she prays in general that he would recompense to them the kindness they had showed to her and hers. It may be expected and prayed for in faith that God will deal kindly with those that have dealt kindly with their relations. He that watereth shall be watered also himself, and in particular that they might be happy in marrying again. The Lord grant ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Note 1. It is very fit that, according to the Apostle's direction, 1 Timothy 5, verse 14, the younger women, and he speaks there of young widows, should marry, bear children, and guide the house. And it is a pity that those who have approved themselves good wives should not again be blessed with good husbands, especially those that, like these widows, have no children. 2. The married state is a state of rest, of such rest as this world affords, rest in the house of a husband, more than can be expected in the house of a mother or a mother-in-law. 3. This rest is God's gift. If any content and satisfaction be found in their outward condition, God must be acknowledged in it. There are those that are unequally yoked, that find little rest even in the house of a husband. Their affliction ought to make those the more thankful to whom the relation is comfortable. Yet let God be the rest of the soul, and no perfect rest thought on this side of heaven. Third, she dismissed them with great affection. She kissed them, wishing she had somewhat better to give them, but silver and gold she had none. However, this parting kiss shall be the seal of such a true friendship as, though she never see them more, she will, while she lives, retain the pleasing remembrance of. If relations must part, let them thus part in love, that they may, if they never meet again in this world, meet in the world of everlasting love. 3. The two young widows could not think of parting with their good mother-in-law, so much had the good conversation of that pious Israelite won upon them. They not only lifted up their voice and wept, as loath to part, but they professed a resolution to adhere to her, verse 10, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people, and take our lot with thee. It is a rare instance of affection to a mother-in-law, and an evidence that they, for her sake, conceived a good opinion of the people of Israel. Even Orpah, who afterward went back to her gods, now seemed partly resolved to go forward with Naomi. The sad ceremony of parting and the tears shed on that occasion drew from her this protestation, but it did not hold. Strong passions, without a settled judgment, commonly produce weak resolutions. 4. Naomi sets herself to dissuade them from going along with her, verses 11 to 13. if she had had any sons in Canaan, or any near kinsmen, whom she could have expected to marry the widows to raise up seed to them that were gone, and to redeem the mortgaged estate of the family, it might have been some encouragement to them to hope for a comfortable settlement at Bethlehem. But she had no sons, nor could she think of any near kinsman likely to do the kinsman's part, and therefore argues that she was never likely to have any sons to be husbands for them, for she was too old to have a husband. It became her age to think of dying and going out of the world, not of marrying and beginning the world again. Or, if she had a husband, she could not expect to have children, nor, if she had sons, could she think that these young widows would stay unmarried till her sons should yet be born, would grow up to be marriageable. Yet this was not all. She could not only not propose to herself to marry them like themselves, but she knew not how to maintain them like themselves. The greatest grievance of that poor condition to which she was reduced was, that she was not in a capacity to do for them as she would. It grieveth me more for your sakes than for my own, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. Observe, first, she judges herself chiefly aimed at in the affliction, that God's quarrel was principally with her. The hand of the Lord is gone out against me. I am the sinner. It is with me that the Lord has a controversy. It is with me that he is contending. I take it to myself. This will become us when we are under affliction. Though many others share in the trouble, yet we must hear the voice of the rod, as if it spoke only against us and to us, not billeting the rebukes of it at other people's houses, but taking them to ourselves. Second, she laments the trouble that redounded to them from it. She was the sinner, but they were the sufferers. It grieveth me much for your sakes. A gracious, generous spirit can better bear its own burden than it can bear to see a grievance to others, or others drawn anyways into trouble by it. Naomi could more easily want herself than see her daughters want. Therefore turn again, my daughters, for alas, I am in no capacity to do you any kindness. But did Naomi do well thus to discourage her daughters from going with her, when, by taking them with her, she might save them from the idolatry of Moab and bring them to the faith and worship of the God of Israel? Naomi no doubt desired to do that, but one, if they did come with her, she would not have them to come upon her account. Those that take upon them a profession of religion only in complaisance to their relations, to oblige their friends, or for the sake of company, will be converts of small value and of short continuance. 2. If they did come with her, she would have them to make it their deliberate choice, and to sit down first and count the cost, as it concerns those that do, that may take up a profession of religion. It is good for us to be told the worst. Our Saviour took this course with him who, in the heat of zeal, spoke that bold word, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. Come, come, says Christ, canst thou fare as I fare? The Son of Man has not where to lay his head. Know that, and then consider whether thou canst find in thy heart to take thy lot with him. Matthew 8, verses 19 and 20. Thus Naomi deals with her daughters-in-law. Thoughts ripened into resolves by serious consideration are likely to be kept always in the imagination of the heart, whereas what is soon ripe is soon rotten. 5. Orpah was easily persuaded to yield to her own corrupt inclination and to go back to her country, her kindred, and her father's house, now when she stood fair for an effectual call from it. They both lifted up their voices and wept again, verse 14, being much affected with the tender things that Naomi had said, but it had a different effect upon them. To Orpah it was a savour of death unto death. The representation Naomi had made of the inconveniences they must count upon if they went forward to Canaan sent her back to the country of Moab, and served her as an excuse for her apostasy. But, on the contrary, it strengthened Ruth's resolution and her good affection to Naomi, with whose wisdom and goodness she was never so charmed as she was upon this occasion. Thus, to her it was a savour of life unto life. First, Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, that is, took an affectionate leave of her, bid her farewell forever, without any purpose to follow her hereafter, as he that said he would follow Christ when he had buried his father, or bidden them farewell that were at home. Orpah's kiss showed she had an affection for Naomi, and was loath to part from her, yet she did not love her well enough to leave her country for her sake. Thus many have a value and affection for Christ, and yet come short of salvation by him, because they cannot find in their hearts to forsake other things for him. They love him, and yet leave him, because they do not love him enough, but love other things better. Thus the young man that went away from Christ went away sorrowful, Matthew 19, verse 22. But second, Ruth clave unto her. Whether, when she came from home, she was resolved to go forward with her or no, does not appear. Perhaps she was before determined what to do, out of a sincere affection to the God of Israel and to his law, of which, by the good instructions of Naomi, she had some knowledge. 6. Naomi persuades Ruth to go back, urging as a further inducement her sister's example, verse 15. Thy sister-in-law is gone back to her people, and therefore of course gone back to her gods, for whatever she might have done while she lived with her mother-in-law, it would be next to impossible for her to show any respect to the God of Israel when she went to live among the worshippers of Chemosh. Those that forsake the communion of saints and return to the people of Moab will certainly break off their communion with God and embrace the idols of Moab. Now return thou after thy sister, that is, if ever thou wilt return, return now. This is the greatest trial of thy constancy. Stand this trial, and thou art mine forever. Such offences as that of Orpah's revolt must needs come, that they which are perfect and sincere may be made manifest, as Ruth was upon this occasion. 7. Ruth puts an end to the debate by a most solemn profession of her immovable resolution never to forsake her, nor to return to her own country and her old relations again, verses 16 and 17. Nothing could be said more fine, more brave than this. She seems to have had another spirit and another speech. Now that her sister was gone, and it is an instance of the grace of God inclining the soul to the resolute choice of the better part. Draw me thus, and we will run after thee. Her mother's dissuasions make her the more resolute. As when Joshua said to the people, Ye cannot serve the Lord, they said it with more vehemence, Nay, but we will. First, she begs of her mother-in-law to say no more against her going. Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee, for all thy entreaties now cannot shake that resolution which thy instructions formerly have wrought in me, and therefore let me hear no more of them. Note, it is a great vexation and uneasiness of those that are resolved for God and religion to be tempted and solicited to alter their resolution. They that would not think of it would not hear of it. Entreat me not. The margin reads it, Be not against me. Note, we are to reckon those against us and really our enemies that would hinder us in our way to the heavenly Canaan. Our relations they may be, but they cannot be our friends that would dissuade us from and discourage us in the service of God and the work of religion. Second, she is very particular in her resolution to cleave to her and never to forsake her, and she speaks the language of one resolved for God and heaven. She is so in love, not with her mother's beauty or riches or gaiety, all those were withered and gone, but with her wisdom and virtue and grace, which remained with her, even in her present poor and melancholy condition, that she resolves to cleave to her. 1. She will travel with her. Whither thou goest, I will go, though to a country I never saw, and which I have been trained up in a low and ill opinion of, though far from my own country, yet with thee every road shall be pleasant. 2. She will dwell with her. Where thou lodgest, I will lodge, though it be in a cottage, nay, though it be no better a lodging than Jacob had, when he had the stones for his pillow. Where thou settest up thy staff, I will set up mine, be it where it will. 3. She will twist interests with her. Thy people shall be my people. From Naomi's character she concludes certainly that that great nation was a wise and an understanding people. She judges of them all by her good mother, who, wherever she went, was a credit to her country, as all those should study to be who profess relation to the better country, that is, the heavenly. And therefore she will think herself happy if she may be reckoned one of them. Thy people shall be mine to associate with, to be conformable to, and to be concerned for. 4. She will join in religion with her. Thus she determined to be hers, usque ad gras, to the very altars. Thy God shall be my God, and farewell to all the gods of Moab, which are vanity and a lie. I will adore the God of Israel, the only living and true God, trust in him alone, serve him, and in everything be ruled by him. This is to take the Lord for our God. 5. She will gladly die in the same bed. Where thou diest will I die. She takes it for granted they must both die, and that, in all probability, Naomi, as the elder, would die first, and resolves to continue in the same house, if it might be, till her days also were fulfilled. Intimating likewise a desire to partake of her happiness in death, she wishes to die in the same place, in token of her dying after the same manner. Let me die the death of righteous Naomi, and let my last end be like hers. 6. She will desire to be buried in the same grave, and to lay her bones by hers. There will I be buried, not desiring to have so much as her dead body carried back to the country of Moab, in token of any remaining kindness for it. But Naomi and she having joined souls, she desires they may mingle dust, in hopes of rising together, and being together forever in the other world. 3. She backs her resolution to adhere to Naomi with a solemn oath. The Lord do so to me, and more also, which was an ancient form of imprecation, if aught but death part thee and me. An oath for confirmation was an end of this strife, and would leave a lasting obligation upon her never to forsake that good way she was now making choice of. 1. It is implied that death would separate between them for a time. She could promise to die and be buried in the same place, but not at the same time. It might so happen that she might die first, and that would part them. Note, death parts those whom nothing else will part. A dying hour is a parting hour, and should be so thought of by us and prepared for. 2. It is resolved that nothing else should part them, not any kindness from her own family and people, not any hope of preferment among them, nor any unkindness from Israel, nor the fear of poverty and disgrace among them. No, I will never leave thee. Now this is a pattern of a resolute convert to God and religion. Thus must we be at a point. First, we must take the Lord for our God. Thus God is my God forever and ever. I have avouched him for mine. Secondly, when we take God for our God, we must take his people for our people in all conditions. Though they be a poor, despised people, yet if they be his, they must be ours. Thirdly, having cast in our lot among them, we must be willing to take our lot with them, and to fare as they fare. We must submit to the same yoke, and draw in it faithfully, take up the cross and carry it cheerfully, go where God would have us to go, though it should be into banishment, and to lodge where he would have us to lodge, though it be in a prison. Die where he will have us die, and lay our bones in the graves of the upright, who enter into peace, and rest in their beds, though they be but the graves of the common people. Fourthly, we must resolve to continue and persevere, and herein our adherence to Christ must be closer than that of Ruth to Naomi. She resolved that nothing but death should separate them, but we must resolve that death itself shall not separate us from our duty to Christ, and then we may be sure that death itself shall not separate us from our happiness in Christ. Fifthly, we must bind ourselves with a bond never to break these pious resolutions, and swear unto the Lord that we will cleave to him. Fast bind, fast find. He that means honestly does not start at assurances. Lastly, Naomi was hereby silenced, verse 18, when she saw that Ruth was steadfastly minded to go with her, which was the very thing she aimed at in all that she had said, to make her of a steadfast mind in going with her. When she saw that she had gained her point, she was well satisfied, and left off speaking to her. She could desire no more than that solemn protestation which Ruth had just now made. See the power of resolution, how it puts temptation to silence. Those that are unresolved and go on in religious ways without a steadfast mind tempt the tempter and stand like a door half open which invites a thief. But resolution shuts and bolts the door, resists the devil, and forces him to flee. The Chaldee paraphrase thus relates the debate between Naomi and Ruth. Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave thee, for I will be a proselyte." Naomi said, "We are commanded to keep Sabbaths and good days, on which we may not travel above 2,000 cubits, a Sabbath day's journey." "Well," says Ruth, "whither thou goest, I will go." Naomi said, "We are commanded not to tarry all night with Gentiles." "Well," says Ruth, "where thou lodgest, I will lodge." Naomi said, "We are commanded to keep 613 precepts." "Well," says Ruth, "whatever thy people keep, I will keep, for they shall be my people." Naomi said, "We are forbidden to worship any strange god." "Well," says Ruth, "thy God shall be my God." Naomi said, "We have 4 sorts of deaths for malefactors, stoning, burning, strangling, and slaying with the sword." "Well," says Ruth, "where thou diest, I will die." "We have," said Naomi, "houses of sepulchre, and there," said Ruth, "will I be buried." Verse 19. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem, and it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them, and they said, "Is this Naomi?" Verse 20. And she said unto them, "Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me." Verse 21. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Lord hath afflicted me? Verse 22, So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. Naomi and Ruth, after many a weary step, the fatigue of the journey, we may suppose, being somewhat relieved by the good instructions Naomi gave to her proselyte, and the good discourse they had together, came at last to Bethlehem. And they came very seasonably in the beginning of the barley harvest, which was the first of their harvests, that of wheat following after. Now Naomi's eyes might convince her of the truth of what she had heard in the country of Moab, that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread, and Ruth might see this good land in its best state. And now they had opportunity to provide for winter. Our times are in God's hands, both the events and the time of them. Notice is here taken, first, of the discomposure of the neighbours upon this occasion. Verse 19, All the city was moved about them. Her old acquaintance gathered about her to inquire concerning her state, and to bid her welcome to Bethlehem again. Or perhaps they were moved about her, lest she should be a charge to the town, she looked so bare. By this it appears that she had formerly lived respectably, else there had not been so much notice taken of her. If those that have been in a high and prosperous condition break, or fall into poverty or disgrace, their fall is the more remarkable. And they said, Is this Naomi? The women of the city said it, for the word is feminine. They, with whom she had formerly been intimate, were surprised to see her in this condition. She was so much broken and altered with her afflictions that they could scarcely believe their own eyes, or think that this was the same person whom they had formerly seen, so fresh and fair and gay. Is this Naomi? So unlike is the rose when it is withered to what it was when it was blooming. What a poor figure does Naomi make now, compared with what she made in her prosperity. If any asked this question in contempt, upbraiding her with her miseries, is this she that could not be content to fare as her neighbours did, but must ramble to a strange country? See what she has got by it. Their temper was very base and sordid, nothing more barbarous than to triumph over those that are fallen. But we may suppose that the generality asked it in compassion and commiseration. Is this she that lived so plentifully, and kept so good a house, and was so charitable to the poor? How is the gold become dim? They that had seen the magnificence of the first temple wept when they saw the meanness of the second. So these here. Note, afflictions will make great and surprising changes in a little time. When we see how sickness and old age alter people, change their countenance and temper, we may think of what the Bethlehemites said, Is this Naomi? One would not take it to be the same person. God, by his grace, fit us for all such changes, especially the great change. Second, of the composure of Naomi's spirit. If some upbraided her with poverty, she was not moved against them, as she would have been, if she had been poor and proud, but with a great deal of pious patience bore that, and all the other melancholy effects of her affliction, verses 20 and 21, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, etc. Naomi signifies pleasant or amiable, but all my pleasant things are laid waste, call me Mara, bitter or bitterness, for I am now a woman of a sorrowful spirit. Thus does she bring her mind to her condition, which we all ought to do when our condition is not in everything to our mind. Observe, first, the change of her state, and how that is described, with a pious regard to the divine providence, and without any passionate murmurings or complaints. First, it was a very sad and melancholy change. She went out full, so she thought herself, when she had her husband with her and 2 sons. Much of the fullness of our comfort in this world arises from agreeable relations. But she now came home again empty, a widow and childless, and probably had sold her goods, and, of all the effects she took with her, brought home no more than the clothes on her back. So uncertain is all that which we call fullness in the creature, 1 Samuel 2 verse 5. Even in the fullness of that sufficiency we may be in straits. But there is a fullness, a spiritual and divine fullness, which we can never be emptied of, a good part which shall not be taken from those that have it. Second, she acknowledges the hand of God, his mighty hand in the affliction. It is the Lord that has brought me home again empty. It is the Almighty that has afflicted me. Note, nothing conduces more to satisfy a gracious soul under an affliction than the consideration of the hand of God in it. It is the Lord, 1 Samuel 3 verse 18, Job 1 verse 21. especially to consider that he who afflicts us is Shaddai, the Almighty, with whom it is folly to contend, and to whom it is our duty and interest to submit. It is that name of God by which he enters into covenant with his people. I am God Almighty, God all-sufficient. Genesis 17, verse 1. He afflicts as a God in covenant, and his all-sufficiency may be our support and supply under all our afflictions. He that empties us of the creature knows how to fill us with himself. Third, she speaks very feelingly of the impression which the affliction had made upon her. He has dealt very bitterly with me. The cup of affliction is a bitter cup, and even that which afterwards yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness, yet for the present is not joyous but grievous. Hebrews 12, verse 11. Job complains, Thou writest bitter things against me. Job 13, verse 26. Fourth, she owns the affliction to have come from God as a controversy. The Lord hath testified against me. Note, when God corrects us, he testifies against us and contends with us. Job 10, verse 17, intimating that he is displeased with us. Every rod has a voice, the voice of a witness. 2. The compliance of her spirit with this change. Call me not Naomi, for I am no more pleasant, either to myself or to my friends, but call me Mara, a name more agreeable to my present state. Many that are debased and impoverished, yet affect to be called by the empty names and titles of honor they have formerly enjoyed. Naomi did not so. Her humility regards not a glorious name in a dejected state. If God deal bitterly with her, she accommodates herself to the dispensation, and is willing to be called Mara, bitter. Note, it well becomes us to have our hearts humbled under humbling providences. When our condition is brought down, our spirits should be brought down with it. And then our troubles are sanctified to us, when we thus comport with them. For it is not an affliction itself, but an affliction rightly borne that does us good. Peridisti tot mala, si nondum misera esse didesisti. So many calamities have been lost upon you, if you have not yet learned how to suffer. Seneca ad Haeviam. Tribulation works patience. Ruth chapter 2. There is scarcely any chapter in all the sacred history that stoops so low as this, to take cognizance of so mean a person as Ruth, a poor Moabitish widow, so mean an action as her gleaning corn in a neighbour's field, and the minute circumstances thereof. But all this was in order to her being grafted into the line of Christ, and taken in among his ancestors, that she might be a figure of the espousals of the Gentile church to Christ. Isaiah 54, verse 1. And this makes the story remarkable, and many of the passages of it are instructive and very improvable. Here is first Ruth's humility and industry in gleaning corn, Providence directing her to Boaz's field, verses 1 to 3. Second, the great favor which Boaz showed to her in many instances, verses 4 to 16. Third, the return of Ruth to her mother-in-law, verses 18 to 23. Verse 1, And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. Verse 2, And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go to the field, and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter. Verse 3, And she went, and came, and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. Naomi had now gained a settlement in Bethlehem among her old friends, and here we have an account, first, of her rich kinsman Boaz, a mighty man of wealth, verse 1. The Chaldee reads it mighty in the law. If he was both, it was a most rare and excellent conjunction, to be mighty in wealth and mighty in the Scriptures too. Those that are so are mighty indeed. He was a grandson of Nahshon, that was prince of the tribe of Judah in the wilderness, and son of Salmon, probably a younger son by Rahab, the harlot of Jericho. He carries might in his name, Boaz, in him is strength. And he was of the family of Elimelech, that family which was now reduced and brought so low. Observe 1, Boaz, though a rich and great man, had poor relations. Every branch of the tree is not a top branch. Let not those that are great in the world be ashamed to own their kindred that are mean and despised, lest they be found therein proud, scornful, and unnatural. 2, Naomi, though a poor contemptible widow, had rich relations, whom yet she neither boasted of, nor was burdensome to, nor expected anything from, when she was returned to Bethlehem in distress. Those that have rich relations, while they themselves are poor, ought to know that it is the wise providence of God to make the difference, in which we ought to acquiesce, and that to be proud of our relation to such is a great sin, and to trust to it is great folly. Second, of her poor daughter-in-law Ruth. 1. Her condition was very low and poor, which was a great trial to the faith and constancy of a young proselyte. The Bethlehemites had done well if they had invited Naomi and her daughter-in-law first to one good house and then to another. It would have been a great support to an aged widow and a great encouragement to a new convert, but instead of tasting the dainties of Canaan, they have no way of getting necessary food but by gleaning corn, and otherwise, for aught that appears, they might have starved. Note, God has chosen the poor of this world, and poor they are like to be, for though God has chosen them, commonly men overlook them. 2. Her character in this condition was very good. Verse 2, she said to Naomi, not, "Let me now go to the land of Moab again, for there is no living here. Here there is want, but in my father's house there is bread enough." No, she is not mindful of the country from which she came out, otherwise she had now a fair occasion to return. The God of Israel shall be her God, and though he slay her, yet will she trust in him and never forsake him. But her request is, "Let me go to the field and glean ears of corn." Those that are well born and have been well brought up know not what straits they may be reduced to, nor what mean employments they may be obliged to get their bread by. Lamentations 4 verse 5. When the case is thus melancholy, let Ruth be remembered, who is a great example. First, of humility. When Providence had made her poor, she did not say, "To glean, which is in effect to beg, I am ashamed," but cheerfully stoops to the meanness of her circumstances, and accommodates herself to her lot. High spirits can more easily starve than stoop. Ruth was none of those. She does not tell her mother she was never brought up to live upon crumbs. Though she was not brought up to it, she is brought down to it, and is not uneasy at it. Nay, it is her own motion, not her mother's injunction. Humility is one of the brightest ornaments of youth, and one of the best omens. Before Ruth's honour was this humility. Observe how humbly she speaks of herself, in her expectation of leave to glean. "Let me glean after him in whose sight I shall find grace." She does not say, "I will go glean, and surely nobody will deny me the liberty," but "I will go glean in the hope that somebody will allow me the liberty." Note, poor people must not demand kindness as a debt, but humbly ask it, and take it as a favour, though in ever so small a matter. It becomes the poor to use entreaties. Second, of industry. She does not say to her mother-in-law, "Let me now go a-visiting to the ladies of the town, or go a-walking in the fields to take the air, and be merry. I cannot sit all day moping with you." No, it is not sport but business that her heart is upon. "Let me go and glean ears of corn, and that will turn to some good account." She was one of those virtuous women that love not to eat the bread of idleness. She loved to take pains. This is an example to young people. Let them learn betimes to labour, and what their hand finds to do, do it with their might. A disposition to diligence bodes well, both for this world and the other. Love not sleep, love not sport, love not sauntering, but love business. It is also an example to poor people to work for their living, and not beg that which they are able to earn. We must not be shy of any honest employment, though it be mean. Ergon uden snedos. No labour is a reproach. Sin is a thing below us, but we must not think anything else, so that Providence calls us to. Third, of regard to her mother. Though she was but her mother-in-law, and though, being loosed by death from the law of her husband, she might easily suppose herself thereby loosed from the law of her husband's mother, yet she is dutifully observant of her. She will not go out without letting her know and asking her leave. This respect young people ought to show to their parents and governors. It is part of the honour due to them. She did not say, "Mother, if you'll go with me, I will go glean," but "Do you sit at home and take your ease, and I will go abroad and take pains." Juniores ad labores, youth should work. Let young people take advice from the aged, but not put them upon toil. Fourth, of dependence upon Providence. Intimated in that, "I will glean after him in whose sight I shall find grace." She knows not which way to go, nor whom to inquire for, but will trust Providence to raise her up some friend or other that will be kind to her. Let us always keep up good thoughts of the divine Providence, and believe that while we do well, it will do well for us. And it did well for Ruth, for when she went out alone, without guide or companion to glean, her hap was to light on the field of Boaz. Verse 3. To her it seemed casual, she knew not whose field it was, nor had she any reason for going to that more than any other, and therefore it is said to be her hap. But Providence directed her steps to this field. Note, God wisely orders small events, and those that seem altogether contingent serve his own glory and the good of his people. Many a great affair is brought about by a little turn which seemed fortuitous to us, but was directed by Providence with design. Verse 4, And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered him, The Lord bless thee. Verse 5, Then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over the reapers, Whose damsel is this? Verse 6, And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, It is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. Verse 7, And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came, and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. Verse 8, Then said Boaz unto Ruth, Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Verse 9, Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go unto the vessels, and drink of that which the young men have drawn. Verse 10, Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldst take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? Verse 11, And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother, and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore. Verse 12, The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Verse 13, Then she said, Let me find favour in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thy handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thy handmaidens. Verse 14, And Boaz said unto her, At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. Verse 15, And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. Verse 16, And let fall also some of the handfuls for purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. Now Boaz himself appears, and a great deal of decency there appears in his carriage, both towards his own servants and towards this poor stranger. First, towards his own servants, and those that were employed for him in reaping and harvesting in his corn. Harvest time is busy time, many hands must then be at work. Boaz, that had much, being a mighty man of wealth, had much to do, and consequently many to work under him, and to live upon him. As goods are increased, they are increased that eat them, and what good has the owner thereof, save the beholding of them with his eyes? Boaz is here an example of a good master. 1. He had a servant that was set over the reapers, verse 6. In great families it is requisite there should be one to oversee the rest of the servants, and appoint to each their portion, both of work and meat. Ministers are such servants in God's house, and it is requisite that they be both wise and faithful, and show their Lord all things, as he here, verse 6. 2. Yet he came himself to his reapers to see how the work went forward, if he found anything amiss, to rectify it, and to give further orders what should be done. This was both for his own interest. He that wholly leaves his business to others will have it done by the halves. The master's eye makes a fat horse. And it was also for the encouragement of his servants, who would go on the more cheerfully in their work, when their master countenanced them so far as to make them a visit. Masters that live at ease should think with tenderness of those that toil for them, and bear the burden and heat of the day. 3. Kind and pious salutations were interchanged between Boaz and his reapers. He said to them, The Lord be with you, and they replied, The Lord bless thee. Verse 4. Hereby they expressed, first, their mutual respect to each other, he to them as good servants, and they to him as a good master. When he came to them, he did not fall a-chiding them, as if he came only to find fault and exercise his authority, but he prayed for them, The Lord be with you, prosper you, and give you health and strength, and preserve you from any disaster. Nor did they, as soon as ever he was out of hearing, fall a-cursing him, as some ill-natured servants that hate their master's eye. But they returned his courtesy, The Lord bless thee, and make our labours serviceable to thy prosperity. Things are likely to go on well in a house where there is such good will as this between master and servants. Second, their joint dependence upon the divine providence. They express their kindness to each other by praying one for another. They show not only their courtesy, but their piety, and an acknowledgment that all good comes from the presence and blessing of God, which, therefore, we should value and desire above anything else, both for ourselves and others. Let us from hence learn to use 1. Courteous salutations, as expressions of a sincere goodwill to our friends. 2. Pious ejaculations, lifting up our hearts to God for his favour, in such short prayers as these. Only we must take heed that they do not degenerate into formality, lest in them we take the name of the Lord our God in vain, but, if we be serious in them, we may in them keep up our communion with God, and fetch in mercy and grace from him. It appears to have been the usual custom thus to wish reapers good speed. Psalm 129, verses 7 and 8. 4. He took an account from his reapers concerning a stranger he met with in the field, and gave necessary orders concerning her, that they should not touch her, verse 9, nor reproach her, verse 15. Masters must take care not only that they do not hurt themselves, but that they suffer not their servants and those under them to do hurt. He also ordered them to be kind to her, and let fall some of the handfuls on purpose for her. Though it is fit that masters should restrain and rebuke their servants' wastefulness, yet they should not tie them up from being charitable, but give them allowance for that, with prudent directions. Second, Boaz was very kind to Ruth, and showed her a great deal of favour, induced to it by the account he had of her, and what he observed concerning her, God also inclining his heart to countenance her. Coming among his reapers, he observed this stranger among them, and got intelligence from his steward who she was, and here is a very particular account of what passed concerning her. 1. The steward gave to Boaz a very fair account of her, proper to recommend her to his favour, verses 6 and 7. First, that she was a stranger, and therefore one of those that by the law of God were to gather the gleanings of the harvest, Leviticus 19, verses 9 and 10. She is the Moabitish damsel. Second, that she was allied to his family. She came back with Naomi, the wife of Elimelech, a kinsman of Boaz. Third, that she was a proselyte, for she came out of the country of Moab to settle in the land of Israel. Fourth, that she was very modest, and had not gleaned till she had asked leave. Fifth, that she was very industrious, and had continued close to her work from morning even until now. And the poor, that are industrious and willing to take pains, are fit to be encouraged. Now in the heat of the day she tarried a little, in the house or booth that was set up in the field for shelter from the weather, to repose herself, and some suggest that it is probable she retired for her devotion. But she soon came back to her work, and except that little intermission, kept close to it all day, though it was not what she was used to. Servants should be just in the character and reports they give to their masters, and take heed they do not misrepresent any person, nor without cause discourage their master's charity. 2. Boaz was hereupon extremely civil to her in diverse instances. First, he ordered her to attend his reapers in every field they gathered in, and not to glean in another field, for she should not need to go anywhere else to mend herself. Verse 8. Abide here fast by my maidens, for those of her own sex were the fittest company for her. Second, he charged all his servants to be very tender of her and respectful to her, who, no doubt, would be so to one whom they saw their master kind to. She was a stranger, and it is probable her language, dress, and mien differed much from theirs, but he charged them that they should not in anything affront her or be abusive to her, as rude servants are too apt to be to strangers. Third, he bids her welcome to the entertainment he had provided for his servants. He ordered her not only to drink of the water which was drawn for them, for that seems to be the liquor he means, verse 9, drawn from the famous well of Bethlehem, which was by the gate, the water of which David longed for, 2 Samuel 23, verse 15. But at mealtime to come eat of their bread, verse 14. Yea, and she should be welcome to their sauce too. Come, dip thy morsel in the vinegar, to make it savoury, for God allows us not only nourishing but relishing food, not for necessity only but for delight. And for encouragement to her, and direction to the servants, he himself, happening to be present when the reapers sat down to meat, reached her parched corn to eat. It is no disparagement to the finest hand to be reached forth to the needy, Proverbs 31, verse 20, and to be employed in serving the poor. Observe, Boaz was not scanty in his provision for his reapers, but sent them so much more than enough for themselves as would be entertainment for a stranger. Thus there is that scattereth, and yet increaseth. Fourth, he commendeth her for her dutiful respect to her mother-in-law, which, though he did not know her by sight, yet he had heard of, verse 11, it has been fully showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law. Note, those that do well ought to have the praise of it, but that which especially he commended her for was that she had left her own country and was become a proselyte to the Jewish religion. For so the Chaldee expounds it, thou art come to be proselyted and to dwell among a people which thou knowest not. Those that leave all to embrace the true religion are worthy of double honour. Fifth, he prayed for her, verse 12, the Lord recompense thy work. Her strong affection to the commonwealth of Israel, to which she was by birth an alien, was such a work of the divine grace in her as would certainly be crowned with a full reward by him under whose wings she was come to trust. Note, those that by faith come under the wings of the divine grace, and have a full complacency and confidence in that grace, may be sure of a full recompense of reward for their so doing. From this expression the Jews describe a proselyte to be one that is gathered under the wings of the divine majesty. Lastly, he encouraged her to go on in her gleaning, and did not offer to take her off from that, for the greatest kindness we can do our poor relations is to assist and encourage their industry. Boaz ordered his servants to let her glean among the sheaves, where other gleaners were not allowed to come, and not to reproach her, that is, not to call her thief, or to suspect her of taking more than was allowed her. Verse 15. All this shows Boaz to have been a man of a generous spirit, and one that, according to the law, considered the heart of a stranger. 3. Ruth received his favours with a great deal of humility and gratitude, and conducted herself with as much propriety in her place as he did in his, but little thinking that she should shortly be the mistress of that field she was now gleaning in. First, she paid all possible respect to him, and gave him honour according to the usage of the country. Verse 10. She fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground. Note, good breeding is a great ornament to religion, and we must render honour to whom honour is due. Second, she humbly owned herself unworthy of his favours. I am a stranger, verse 10, and not like one of thy handmaids, verse 13. Not so well dressed, nor so well taught, not so neat, nor so handy. Note, it well becomes all to think meanly of ourselves, and to take notice of that in ourselves which is diminishing, esteeming others better than ourselves. Third, she gratefully acknowledged his kindness to her, though it was no great expense to him, nor much more than what he was obliged to by the divine law. Yet she magnifies and admires it. Why have I found grace in thine eyes? Verse 10. Fourth, she begs the continuance of his good will. Let me find favour in thy sight, verse 13, and owns that what he had said had been a cordial to her. Thou hast comforted me, for that thou hast spoken friendly to me. Those that are great and in high places know not how much good they may do to their inferiors with a kind look, or by speaking friendly to them, and so small an expense one would think they should not grudge when it shall be put upon the score of their charity. Fifth, when Boaz gave her her dinner with his reapers, she ate so much as would suffice her, and left the rest, and immediately rose up to glean, verses 14 and 15. She did not, under pretence either of her want or of her labour, eat more than was convenient for her, nor so much as to unfit her for work in the afternoon. Temperance is a friend to industry, and we must eat and drink to strengthen us for business, and not to indispose us to it. Verse 17. So she gleaned in the field until even, and beat out that she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. Verse 18. And she took it up, and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. Verse 19, And her mother-in-law said unto her, Where hast thou gleaned today, and where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, The man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. Verse 20, And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, The man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. Verse 21, And Ruth the Moabitess said, He said unto me also, Thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. Verse 22, And Naomi said unto Ruth her daughter-in-law, It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field. Verse 23, So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz, to glean unto the end of barley harvest and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. Here, first, Ruth finishes her day's work, verse 17. 1. She took care not to lose time, for she gleaned until even. We must not be weary of well-doing, because in due season we shall reap. She did not make an excuse to sit still or go home till the evening. Let us work the works of him that sent us while it is day. She scarcely used, much less did she abuse, the kindness of Boaz, for though he ordered his servants to leave handfuls for her, she continued to glean the scattered ears. 2. She took care not to lose what she had gathered, but thrashed it herself, that she might the more easily carry it home, and might have it ready for use. The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, and so loseth the benefit of it. But the substance of a diligent man is precious. Proverbs 12, verse 27. Ruth had gathered it ear by ear, but when she had put it all together, it was an ephah of barley, about 4 pecks. Many a little makes a great deal. It is an encouragement to industry that in all labour, even that of gleaning, there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury. When she had got her corn into as little compass as she could, she took it up herself and carried it into the city, though had she asked them, it is likely some of Boaz's servants would have done that for her. We should study to be as little as possible troublesome to those that are kind to us. She did not think it either too hard or too mean a service to carry her corn herself into the city, but was rather pleased with what she had gotten by her own industry, and careful to secure it. And let us thus take care that we lose not those things which we have wrought, which we have gained. 2 John 8. Second, she paid her respects to her mother-in-law, went straight home to her, and did not go to converse with Boaz's servants, showed her what she had gleaned, that she might see she had not been idle. 1. She entertained her with what she had left of the good dinner Boaz had given her. She gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed, verse 18, which refers to verse 14. If she had anything better than another, her mother should have part with her. Thus, having showed industry abroad, she showed piety at home. So children's maintaining of their parents is called, 1 Timothy 5, verse 4, and it is part of the honour due to them by the 5th commandment. 2. She gave her an account of her day's work, and how a kind providence had favoured her in it, which made it very comfortable to her, for the gleanings that a righteous man hath are better than the harvests of many wicked. Psalm 37, verse 16. First, Naomi asked where she had been. Where hast thou gleaned today? Note, parents should take care to inquire into the ways of their children, how and where and in what company they spend their time. This may prevent many extravagances which children, left to themselves, run into, by which they bring both themselves and their parents to shame. If we are not our brethren's, yet surely we are our children's keepers. And we know not what a son Adonijah proved, that had never been chidden. Parents should examine their children, not to frighten or discourage them, so as to make them hate home or tempt them to tell a lie, but to commend them if they have done well, and with mildness to reprove and caution them if they have done otherwise. It is a good question for us to ask ourselves in the close of every day, where have I gleaned today? What improvements have I made in knowledge and grace? What have I done or gotten that will turn to a good account? Second, Ruth gave her a particular account of the kindness she had received from Boaz, verse 19, and the hopes she had of further kindness from him, he having ordered her to attend his servants throughout all the harvest, verse 21. Note, children should look upon themselves as accountable to their parents and to those that are over them, and not think it a disparagement to them to be examined. Let them do that which is good, and they shall have praise of the same. Ruth told her mother what kindness Boaz had showed her, that she might take some occasion or another to acknowledge it and return him thanks. But she did not tell her how Boaz had commended her, verse 11. Humility teaches us not only not to praise ourselves, but not to be forward to publish others' praises of us. Third, we are here told what Naomi said to it. 1. She prayed heartily for him that had been her daughter's benefactor, even before she knew who it was. Verse 19, Blessed be he, whoever he was, that did take knowledge of thee, shooting the arrow of prayer at a venture. But more particularly, when she was told who it was. Verse 20, Blessed be he of the Lord. Note, the poor must pray for those that are kind and liberal to them, and thus requite them when they are not capable of making them any other requital. Let the loins of the poor bless those that refresh them. Job 29, verse 13, chapter 31, verse 20. And he that hears the cries of the poor against their oppressors, Exodus 22, verse 27, it may be hoped, will hear the prayers of the poor for their benefactors. She now remembered the former kindnesses Boaz had showed to her husband and sons, and joins those to this. He has not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. If we generously show kindness even to those that seem to have forgotten our former favours, perhaps it may help to revive the remembrance even of them which seem buried. 2. She acquainted Ruth with the relation their family was in to Boaz. The man is near of kin to us. It should seem she had been so long in Moab that she had forgotten her kindred in the land of Israel, till by this providence God brought it to her mind. At least she had not told Ruth of it, though it might have been some encouragement to a young proselyte. Unlike to humble Naomi are many who, though fallen into decay themselves, are continually boasting of their great relations. Nay, observe the chain of thought here, and in it a chain of providences, bringing about what was designed concerning Ruth. Ruth names Boaz as one that had been kind to her. Naomi bethinks herself who that should be, and presently recollects herself, the man is near of kin to us. Now that I hear his name, I remember him very well. This thought brings in another. He is our next kinsman, our Goel, that has the right to redeem our estate that was mortgaged, and therefore from him we may expect further kindness. That is the likeliest man in all Bethlehem to set us up. Thus God brings things to our mind, sometimes of a sudden, that prove to have a wonderful tendency to our good. 3. She appointed Ruth to continue her attendance in the fields of Boaz. Verse 22, Let them not meet thee in any other field, for that will be construed a contempt of his courtesy. Our blessed Saviour is our Goel. It is he that has a right to redeem. If we expect to receive benefit by him, let us closely adhere to him and his fields and his family. Let us not go to the world and its fields for that which is to be had with him only, and which he has encouraged us to expect from him. As the Lord dealt bountifully with us, let us not be found in any other field, nor seek for happiness and satisfaction in the creature. Tradesmen take it ill if those that are in their books go to another shop. We lose divine favours if we slight them. Some think Naomi gave her daughter-in-law a tacit rebuke. She had spoken, verse 21, of keeping fast by the young men. Nay, said Naomi, verse 22, it is good that thou go out with his maidens. They are fitter company for thee than the young men. But they are too critical. Ruth spake of the young men because they were the principal labourers, and to them Boaz had given directions concerning her, and Naomi takes it for granted, while she attended the young men, her society would be with the maidens, as was fit. Ruth dutifully obeyed her mother's directions. She continued to glean, to the end not only of barley harvest, but of the wheat harvest, which followed it, that she might gather food in harvest to serve for winter. Proverbs 6, verses 6-8. She also kept fast by the maidens of Boaz, with whom she afterward cultivated an acquaintance, which might do her service. Verse 23. But she constantly came to her mother at night in due time, as became a virtuous woman. That was for working days, and not for merry nights. And when the harvest was ended, as Bishop Patrick expounds it, she did not gad abroad, but kept her aged mother company at home. Dinah went out to see the daughters of the land, and we know what a disgrace her vanity ended in. Ruth kept at home, and helped to maintain her mother, and went out on no other errand than to get provision for her, and we shall find afterward what preferment her humility and industry ended in. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? Honour is before him. Ruth chapter 3. We found it very easy in the former chapter to applaud the decency of Ruth's behaviour, and to show what good use we may make of the account given us of it. But in this chapter we shall have much ado to vindicate it from the imputation of indecency, and to save it from having an ill use made of it. But the goodness of those times was such as saves what is recorded here from being ill done, and yet the badness of these times is such as that it will not justify any now in doing the like. Here is first the direction that Naomi gave to her daughter-in-law how to claim Boaz for her husband, verses 1 to 5. Second, Ruth's punctual observance of these directions, verses 6 and 7. Third, the kind and honourable treatment Boaz gave her, verses 8 to 15. Fourth, her return to her mother-in-law, verses 16 to 18. Verse 1. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? Verse 2. And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Verse 3. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor, but make not thyself known unto the man, until he shall have done eating and drinking. Verse 4. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. Verse 5. And she said unto her, All that thou sayest unto me I will do. Here, first, Naomi's care for her daughter's comfort is, without doubt, very commendable, and is recorded for imitation. She had no thoughts of marrying herself, chapter 1, verse 12, but though she that was old had resolved upon a perpetual widowhood, yet she was far from the thoughts of confining her daughter-in-law to it, that was young. Age must not make itself a standard to youth. On the contrary, she is full of contrivance how to get her well married. Her wisdom projected that for her daughter which her daughter's modesty forbade her to project for herself, verse 1. This she did, 1, in justice to the dead, to raise up seed to them that were gone, and so preserve the family from being extinct. 2, in kindness and gratitude to her daughter-in-law, who had conducted herself very dutifully and respectfully to her. My daughter, said she, looking upon her in all respects as her own, shall I not seek rest for thee? That is, a settlement in the married state. Shall I not get thee a good husband, that it may be well with thee? That is, that thou mayest live plentifully and pleasantly, and not spend all thy days in the mean and melancholy condition we now live in. Note, first, a married state is, or should be, a state of rest to young people. Wandering affections are then fixed, and the heart must be at rest. It is at rest in the house of a husband, and in his heart, chapter 1, verse 9. Those are giddy induced that marriage does not compose. Second, that which should be desired and designed by those that enter into the marriage state is that it may be well with them, in order to which it is necessary that they choose well. Otherwise, instead of being a rest to them, it may prove the greatest uneasiness. Parents, in disposing of their children, must have this in their eye, that it may be well with them, and be it always remembered, that is best for us which is best for our souls. Third, it is the duty of parents to seek this rest for their children, and to do all that is fit for them to do in due time in order to it. And the more dutiful and respectful they are to them, though they can the worse spare them, yet they should the rather prefer them, and the better. Second, the course she took in order to her daughter's preferment was very extraordinary, and looks suspicious. If there was anything improper in it, the fault must lie upon Naomi, who put her daughter upon it, and who knew or should know the laws and usages of Israel better than Ruth. 1. It was true that Naomi, being near of kin to the deceased, and for aught that Naomi knew to the contrary, the nearest of all now alive, was obliged by the divine law to marry the widow of Mahlon, who was the eldest son of Elimelech, and was dead without issue, verse 2. Is not Boaz of our kindred, and therefore bound in conscience to take care of our affairs? Why should we not remind him of his duty? This may encourage us to lay ourselves by faith at the feet of Christ, that he is our near kinsman, having taken our nature upon him, he is bone of our bone and flesh of our flesh. 2. It was a convenient time to remind him of it, now that he had got so much acquaintance with Ruth by her constant attendance on his reapers during the whole harvest, which was now ended, and he also, by the kindness he had showed to Ruth in lesser matters, had encouraged Naomi to hope that he would not be unkind, much less unjust, in this greater. And she thought it was a good opportunity to apply to him when he made a winnowing feast at his thrashing floor. Verse 2. Then and there completing the joy of the harvest, and treating his workmen like a kind master. He winnoweth barley tonight, that is, he makes his entertainment tonight. As Nabal and Absalom had feasts at their sheep shearing, so Boaz at his winnowing. 3. Naomi thought Ruth the most proper person to do it herself, and perhaps it was the usage in that country that in this case the woman should make the demand. So much is intimated by the law, Deuteronomy 25, verses 7 to 9. Naomi therefore orders her daughter-in-law to make herself clean and neat, not to make herself fine. Verse 3, Wash thyself and anoint thee, not paint thee, as Jezebel. Put on thy raiment, but not the attire of the harlot, and go down to the floor, whither, it is probable, she was invited to the supper there made, but she must not make herself known, that is, not make her errand known. She herself could not but be very well known among Boaz's reapers, till the company was dispersed, and Boaz was retired. And upon this occasion she would have an easier access to him in private than she could have at his own house, and thus far was well enough. But 4, her coming to lie down at his feet when he was asleep in his bed, had such an appearance of evil, was such an approach towards it, and might have been such an occasion of it, that we know not well how to justify it. Many expositors think it unjustifiable, particularly the excellent Mr. Poole. We must not do evil that good may come. It is dangerous bringing the spark and the tinder together, for how great a matter may a little fire kindle. All agree that it is not to be drawn into a precedent. Neither our laws nor our times are the same that were then. Yet I am willing to make the best of it. If Boaz was, as they presumed, the next kinsman, she was his wife before God, as we say, and there needed but little ceremony to complete the nuptials, and Naomi did not intend that Ruth should approach to him any otherwise than as his wife. She knew Boaz to be not only an old man, she would not have trusted to that alone in venturing her daughter-in-law so near him, but a grave, sober man, a virtuous and religious man, and one that feared God. She knew Ruth to be a modest woman, chaste, and a keeper at home, Titus 2 verse 5. The Israelites had indeed been once debauched by the daughters of Moab, Numbers 25 verse 1, but this Moabitess was none of those daughters. Naomi herself designed nothing but what was honest and honourable, and her charity, which believeth all things and hopeth all things, banished and forbade all suspicion that either Boaz or Ruth would offer anything but what was likewise honest and honourable. If what she advised had been then as indecent and immodest, according to the usage of the country, as it seems now to us, we cannot think that if Naomi had had so little virtue, which yet we have no reason to suspect, that she should have had so little wisdom as to put her daughter upon it, since that alone might have marred the match, and have alienated the affections of so grave and good a man as Boaz from her. We must therefore think that the thing did not look so ill then as it does now. Naomi referred her daughter-in-law to Boaz for further directions. When she had thus made her claim, Boaz, who is more learned in the laws, would tell her what she must do. Thus we must lay ourselves at the feet of our Redeemer to receive from him our doom. Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? Acts 9 verse 6. We may be sure, if Ruth had apprehended any evil in that which her mother advised her to, she was a woman of too much virtue and too much sense to promise as she did. Verse 5, All that thou sayest unto me I will do. Thus must the younger submit to the elder, and to their grave and prudent counsels, when they have nothing worth speaking of to object against it. Verse 6, And she went down unto the floor, and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. Verse 7, And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly, and uncovered his feet, and lay her down. Verse 8, And it came to pass at midnight, that the man was afraid, and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. Verse 9, And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. Verse 10, And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followedst not young men, whether poor or rich. Verse 11, And now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. Verse 12, And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Verse 13, Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Lie down until the morning. Here is, first, Boaz's good management of his common affairs. It is probable, according to the common usage. 1. His servants winnowed, he was with them, and had his eye upon them to prevent not their stealing any of his corn. He had no reason to fear that, but their waste of it through carelessness in the winnowing of it. Masters may sustain great losses by servants that are heedless, though they be honest, which is a reason why men should be diligent to know the state of their own flocks, and look well to them. 2. When he had more than ordinary work to be done, he treated his servants with extraordinary entertainments, and for their encouragement did eat and drink with them. It well becomes those that are rich and great to be generous to, and also to be familiar with, those that are under them, and employed for them. 3. When Boaz had supped with his workmen, and been a while pleasant with them, he went to bed in due time, so early that by midnight he had his first sleep, verse 8, and thus he would be fit for his business betimes next morning. All that are good husbands will keep good hours, and not indulge themselves or their families in unseasonable mirth. The Chaldee paraphrase tells us, verse 7, that Boaz ate and drank, and his heart was good, and so the Hebrew word is, and he blessed the name of the Lord, who had heard his prayers and taken away the famine from the land of Israel. So that he went sober to bed, his heart was in a good frame, and not overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness. And he did not go to bed without prayer. Now that he had eaten and was full, he blessed the Lord, and now that he was going to rest, he committed himself to the divine protection. It was well he did, for he had an unusual temptation before him, though he knew not of it. 4. He had his bed or couch laid at the end of the heap of corn, not because he had his heart set upon it, nor only that he might tend and keep it safe from thieves, but it was too late to go home to the city, and here he would be near his work, and ready for it next morning, and he would show that he was not nice or curious in his lodging, neither took state nor consulted his ease, but was, like his father Jacob, a plain man, that, when there was occasion, could make his bed in a barn, and, if need were, sleep contentedly in the straw. 2. Ruth's good assurance in the management of her affair. She observed her mother's orders, went and lay down, not by his side, but overacross his bed's feet, in her clothes, and kept awake, waiting for an opportunity to tell her errand. When he awakened in the night and perceived there was somebody at his feet, and inquired who it was, she told him her name, and then her errand, verse 9, that she came to put herself under his protection, as the person appointed by the divine law to be her protector. Thou art he that has a right to redeem a family and an estate from perishing, and therefore let this ruin be under thine hand. And spread thy skirt over me, be pleased to espouse me and my cause. Thus must we, by faith, apply ourselves to Jesus Christ as our next kinsman, that is able to redeem us, come under his wings, as we are invited, Matthew 23, verse 37, and beg of him to spread his skirt over us. Lord Jesus, take me into thy covenant, and under thy care. I am oppressed, undertake for me. 3. The good acceptance Ruth gained with Boaz. What she did had no ill effect, either one way or other, so that Naomi was not mistaken in her good opinion of her kinsman. He knew her demand was just and honourable, and treated her accordingly, and did not deal with his sister as with a harlot. Genesis 34, verse 31. For one, he did not offer to violate her chastity, though he had all the opportunity that could be for it. The Chaldee paraphrase thus descants upon it. He subdued his concupiscence, and did not approach to her, but did as Joseph the just, who would not come near to his Egyptian mistress, and as Phaltiel the pious, who, when Saul had given him Michal, David's wife, 1 Samuel 25 verse 44, put a sword between himself and her, that he might not touch her. Boaz knew it was not any sinful lust that brought her thither, and therefore bravely maintained both his own honor and hers. 2. He did not put any ill construction upon what she said, did not reproach her as an imprudent woman, and unfit to make an honest man a wife. She having approved herself well in the fields, and all her conduct having been modest and decent, he would not from this instance entertain the least suspicion of her character, or seem to do so, perhaps blaming himself that he had not offered the service of a kinsman to these distressed widows, and saved her this trouble, and ready to say, as Judah concerning his daughter-in-law, she is more righteous than I. But on the contrary, first, he commended her, spoke kindly to her, called her his daughter, and spoke honorably of her, as a woman of eminent virtue. She had showed in this instance more kindness to her mother-in-law, and to the family into which she had matched, than in any instance yet. It was very kind to leave her own country and come along with her mother to the land of Israel, to dwell with her and help to maintain her. For this he had blessed her. Chapter 2, verse 12. But now he says, Thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning. Verse 10. In that she consulted not her own fancy, but her husband's family in marrying again. She received not the address of young men, much less did she seek them, whether poor or rich, but was willing to marry as the law directed, though it was to an old man, because it was for the honor and interest of the family into which she had matched, and for which she had an entire kindness. Young people must aim, in disposing of themselves, not so much to please their own eye as to please God and their parents. Second, he promised her marriage, verse 11. Fear not that I will slight thee, or expose thee. No, I will do all that thou requirest, for it is the same that the law requires from the next of kin, and I have no reason to decline it, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. Verse 11. Note 1. Exemplary virtue ought to have its due praise, Philippians 4 verse 8, and it will recommend both men and women to the esteem of the wisest and best. Ruth was a poor woman, and poverty often obscures the lustre of virtue. Yet Ruth's virtues, even in a mean condition, were generally taken notice of, and could not be hid. Nay, her virtues took away the reproach of her poverty. If poor people be but good people, they shall have honor from God and man. Ruth had been remarkable for her humility, which paved the way to this honor. The less she proclaimed her own goodness, the more did her neighbors take notice of it. 2. In the choice of yokefellows, virtue should especially be regarded, known approved virtue. Let religion determine the choice, and it will certainly crown the choice and make it comfortable. Wisdom is better than gold, and when it is said to be good with an inheritance, the meaning is that an inheritance is worth little without it. Third, he made his promise conditional, and could not do otherwise, for it seems there was a kinsman that was nearer than he, to whom the right of redemption did belong. Verse 12. This he knew, but we may reasonably suppose Naomi, who had been long abroad, and could not be exact in the pedigree of her husband's family, was ignorant of it. Otherwise, she would never have sent her daughter to make her claim of Boaz. Yet he does not bid her go herself to the other kinsman. That had been to put too great a hardship upon her. But he promises, 1, that he would himself propose it to the other kinsman, and know his mind. The Hebrew word for a widow signifies one that is dumb. Boaz will therefore open his mouth for the dumb, Proverbs 31 verse 8, and will say that for this widow which she knew not how to say for herself. 2. That if the other kinsman refused to do the kinsman's part, he would do it, would marry the widow, redeem the land, and so repair the family. This promise he backs with a solemn oath, for it was a conditional contract of marriage, verse 13, as the Lord liveth. Thus keeping the matter in suspense, he bade her wait till morning. Bishop Hall thus sums up this matter in his Contemplations. Boaz, instead of touching her as a wanton, blesseth her as a father, encourageth her as a friend, promiseth her as a kinsman, rewards her as a patron, and sends her away laden with hopes and gifts, no less chaste, more happy than she came. O admirable temperance, worthy the progenitor of him in whose lips and heart there was no guile. Verse 14, and she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, Let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. Verse 15, also he said, Bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her, and she went into the city. Verse 16, and when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, Who art thou, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done to her. Verse 17, and she said, These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, Go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Verse 18, then she said, Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall, for the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. We are here told, first, how Ruth was dismissed by Boaz. It had not been safe for her to go home in the dead of the night. Therefore she lay at his feet, not by his side, until morning, but as soon as ever the day broke, that she had light to go home by, she got away, before one could know another, that if she was seen, yet she might not be known to be abroad so unseasonably. She was not shy of being known to be a gleaner in the field, nor ashamed of that mark of her poverty, but she would not willingly be known to be a night walker, for her virtue was her greatest honour, and that which she most valued. Boaz dismissed her, first, with a charge to keep counsel, verse 14, Let it not be known that a woman came into the floor, and lay all night so near to Boaz, not that they needed to care much what people said of them, while they were both conscious to themselves of an unspotted purity, but because few could have come so near the fire as they did, and not have been scorched. Had it been known, it would have occasioned suspicions in some and reflections from others. Good people would have been troubled, and bad people would have triumphed, and therefore let it not be known. Note, we must always take care not only to keep a good conscience, but to keep a good name. Either we must not do that which, though innocent, is liable to be misinterpreted, or if we do, we must not let it be known. We must avoid not only sin, but scandal. There was likewise a particular reason for concealment here. If this matter should take wind, it might prejudice the freedom of the other kinsman's choice, and he would make this his reason for refusing Ruth, that Boaz and she had been together. 2. He dismissed her with a good present of corn, which would be very acceptable to her poor mother at home, and an evidence for her that he had not sent her away in dislike, which Naomi might have suspected if he had sent her away empty. He gave it her in her veil, or apron, or mantle, gave it her by measure. Like a prudent corn-master, he kept an account of all he delivered out. It was 6 measures, that is, 6 omers, as is supposed, 10 of which made an ephah. Whatever the measure was, it is probable that he gave her as much as she could well carry. Verse 15, and the Chaldee says, Strength was given her from the Lord to carry it, and adds, that now it was told her by the spirit of prophecy that from her should descend 6 of the most righteous men of their age, namely David, Daniel, his 3 companions, and the King Messiah. 2nd, how she was welcomed by her mother-in-law. She asked her, How art thou, my daughter? Art thou a bride or no? Must I give thee joy? So Ruth told her how the matter stood, verses 16 and 17, whereupon her mother, 1, advised her to be satisfied in what was done. Sit still, my daughter, till thou know how the matter will fall, verse 18. How it is decreed in heaven, so the Chaldee reads it, for marriages are made there. She had done all that was fit for her to do, and now she must patiently wait the issue, and not be perplexed about it. Let us learn hence to cast our care upon Providence, to follow that and attend the motions of it, composing ourselves into an expectation of the event, with a resolution to acquiesce in it, whatever it be. Sometimes that proves best done for us that is least our own doing. Sit still, therefore, and see how the matter will fall, and say, Let it fall how it will, I am ready for it. 2. She assured her that Boaz, having undertaken this matter, would approve himself a faithful, careful friend. He will not be at rest till he have finished the matter. Though it was a busy time with him in the fields and his floor, yet having undertaken to serve his friend, he would not neglect the business. Naomi believes Ruth has won his heart, and therefore he will not be easy till he knows whether she be his or no. This she gives as a reason why Ruth should sit still and not perplex herself about it, that Boaz had undertaken it, and he would be sure to manage it well. Much more reason have good Christians to be careful for nothing, but cast their care on God, because he has promised to care for them. And what need have we to care if he do? Sit still and see how the matter will fall, for the Lord will perfect that which concerns thee, and will make it to work for good to thee. Psalm 37, verses 4 and 5. Psalm 138, verse 8. Your strength is to sit still. Isaiah 30, verse 7. Ruth chapter 4. In this chapter we have the wedding between Boaz and Ruth, in the circumstances of which there was something uncommon which is kept upon record, for the illustration not only of the law concerning the marrying of a brother's widow, Deuteronomy 25, verse 5, etc., for cases help to expound laws, but of the gospel too, for from this marriage descended David and the son of David, whose espousals to the Gentile church were hereby typified. We are here told, first, how Boaz got clear of his rival and fairly shook him off, verses 1 to 3. Second, how his marriage with Ruth was publicly solemnized and attended with the good wishes of his neighbors, verses 9 to 12. Third, the happy issue that descended from this marriage. Obed, the grandfather of David, verses 13 to 17. And so the book concludes with the pedigree of David, verses 18 to 22. Perhaps it was to oblige him that the Blessed Spirit directed the inserting of this story into the sacred canon, he being desirous that the virtues of his great-grandmother, Ruth, together with her Gentile extraction, should be transmitted to posterity, and the singular providence that attended her. Verse 1. Then went Boaz up to the gate, and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman, of whom Boaz spake, came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside, and sat down. Verse 2. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city, and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. Verse 3. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. Verse 4. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants, and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, but if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it besides thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Verse 5. Then said Boaz, What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Verse 6. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Verse 7. Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things. A man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Verse 8. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. Here, 1. Boaz calls a court immediately. It is probable he was himself one of the elders or aldermen of the city, for he was a mighty man of wealth. Perhaps he was father of the city and sat chief, for he seems here to have gone up to the gate as one having authority, and not as a common person, like Job, chapter 29, verse 7, etc. We cannot suppose him less than a magistrate in his city, who was grandson to Nashon, prince of Judah, and his lying at the end of a heap of corn in the thrashing floor the night before was not at all inconsistent in those days of plainness with the honor of his sitting judge in the gate. But why was Boaz so hasty? Why so fond of the match? Ruth was not rich, but lived upon alms. Not honorable, but a poor stranger. She was never said to be beautiful. If ever she had been so, we may suppose that weeping and travelling and gleaning had withered her lilies and roses. But that which made Boaz in love with her, and solicitous to expedite the affair, was that all her neighbours agreed she was a virtuous woman. This set her price with him far above rubies, Proverbs 31 verse 10, and therefore he thinks, if by marrying her he might do her a real kindness, he should also do himself a very great kindness. He will therefore bring it to the conclusion immediately. It was not a court day, but he had got 10 men of the elders of the city to meet him in the town hall over the gate, where public business used to be transacted, verse 2. So many, it is probable, by the custom of the city, made a full court. Boaz, though a judge, would not be a judge in his own cause, but desired the concurrence of other elders. honest intentions dread not a public cognizance. 2. He summons his rival to come and hear the matter that was to be proposed to him, verse 1. Ho, such a one, sit down here. He called him by his name, no doubt, but the divine historian thought not fit to record it, for because he refused to raise up the name of the dead, he deserved not to have his name preserved to future ages in this history. Providence favoured Boaz, in ordering it so, that this kinsman should come by thus opportunely, just when the matter was ready to be proposed to him. Great affairs are sometimes much furthered by small circumstances, which facilitate and expedite them. 3. He proposes to the other kinsman the redemption of Naomi's land, which, it is probable, had been mortgaged for money to buy bread with when the famine was in the land. Verse 3. Naomi has a parcel of land to sell, namely, the equity of the redemption of it, out of the hands of the mortgagee, which she is willing to part with. Or, as some think, it was her jointure for life, and wanting money. For a small matter she would sell her interest to the heir at law, who was the fittest to be a purchaser. This he gives the kinsman legal notice of, verse 4, that he might have the refusal of it. Whoever had it must pay for it, and Boaz might have said, My money is as good as my kinsman. If I have a mind to it, why may I not buy it privately, since I had the first proffer of it, and say nothing to my kinsman? No, Boaz, though fond enough of the purchase, would not do so mean a thing as to take a bargain over another man's head. That was nearer akin to it. And we are taught by his example to be not only just and honest, but fair and honourable in all our dealings, and to do nothing which we are unwilling should see the light, but be above board. 4. The kinsman seemed forward to redeem the land, till he was told that if he did that he must marry the widow, and then he flew off. He liked the land well enough, and probably caught at that the more greedily, because he hoped that the poor widow, being under a necessity of selling, he might have so much the better bargain. I will redeem it, said he, with all my heart, thinking it would be a fine addition to his estate, verse 4. But Boaz told him there was a young widow in the case, and if he have the land he must take her with it. Terra transit cum onere, the estate passes with this encumbrance. Either the divine law or the usage of the country would oblige him to it, or Naomi insisted upon it, that she should not sell the land but upon this condition, verse 5. Some think this does not relate to the law of marrying the brother's widow, for that seems to oblige only the children of the same father, Deuteronomy 25, verse 5, unless by custom it was afterwards made to extend to the next of kin. But it refers to the law of redemption of inheritances, Leviticus 25, verses 24 and 25, for it is a goel, a redeemer, that is here inquired for, and if so, it was not by the law, but by Naomi's own resolution, that the purchaser was to marry the widow. However it was, this kinsman, when he heard the conditions of the bargain, refused it, verse 6, I cannot redeem it for myself. I will not meddle with it upon these terms, lest I mar my own inheritance. The land, he thought, would be an improvement of his inheritance, but not the land with the woman. That would mar it. Perhaps he thought it would be a disparagement to him to marry such a poor widow that was come from a strange country and almost lived upon alms. He fancied it would be a blemish to his family, it would mar his blood and disgrace his posterity. Her eminent virtues were not sufficient in his eye to balance this. The Chaldee paraphrase makes his reason for this refusal to be that he had another wife, and if he should take Ruth, it might occasion strife and contention in his family, and that would mar the comfort of his inheritance. Or he thought she might bring him a great many children, and they would all expect shares out of his estate, which would scatter it into too many hands, so that his family would make the less figure. This makes many shy of the great redemption. They are not willing to espouse religion. They have heard well of it, and have nothing to say against it. They will give it their good word, but at the same time they will give their good word with it. They are willing to part with it, and cannot be bound to it, for fear of marring their own inheritance in this world. Heaven they could be glad of, but holiness they can dispense with. It will not agree with the lusts they have already espoused, and therefore let who will purchase heaven at that rate, they cannot. 5. The right of redemption is fairly resigned to Boaz. If this nameless kinsman lost a good bargain, a good estate, and a good wife too, he may thank himself for not considering it better, and Boaz will thank him for making his way clear to that which he valued and desired above anything. In those ancient times it was not the usage to pass estates by writings, as afterward, Jeremiah 32 verse 10, etc., but by some sign or ceremony, as with us by livery and seizin, as we commonly call it, that is, the delivery of seizin of a house by giving the key, of land by giving turf and a twig. The ceremony here used was that he surrendered, plucked off his shoe, the Chaldee says it was the glove of his right hand, and gave it to him to whom he made the surrender, intimating thereby that whatever right he had to tread or go upon the land, he conveyed and transferred it upon a valuable consideration to the purchaser. This was a testimony in Israel, verse 7, and it was done in this case, verse 8. If this kinsman was obliged by the law to have married Ruth, and his refusal had been a contempt of that law, Ruth must have plucked off his shoe and spit in his face, Deuteronomy 25, verse 9. But though his relation should in some measure oblige him to the duty, yet the distance of his relation might serve to excuse him from the penalty, or Ruth might very well dispense with it, since his refusal was all she desired from him. But Bishop Patrick and the best interpreters think this had no relation to that law, and that the drawing off of the shoe was not any disgrace, as there, but a confirmation of the surrender, and an evidence that it was not fraudulently or surreptitiously obtained. Note, fair and open dealing in all matters of contract and commerce is what all those must make conscience of that would approve themselves Israelites indeed, without guile. How much more honourably and honestly does Boaz come by this purchase, than if he had secretly undermined his kinsman and privately struck up a bargain with Naomi unknown to him. Honesty will be found the best policy. Verse 9. And Boaz said unto the elders, and unto all the people, Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's, of the hand of Naomi. Verse 10. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses this day. Verse 11. And all the people that were in the gate, and the elders, said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. Verse 12. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. Boaz now sees his way clear, and therefore delays not to perform his promise made to Ruth, that he would do the kinsman's part, but in the gate of his city, before the elders and all the people, publishes a marriage contract between himself and Ruth the Moabitess, and therewith the purchase of all the estate that belonged to the family of Elimelech. If he had not been, chapter 2 verse 1, a mighty man of wealth, he could not have compassed his redemption, nor done this service to his kinsman's family. What is a great estate good for, but that it enables a man to do so much the more good in his generation, and especially to those of his own household, if he have but a heart to use it so. Now concerning this marriage it appears, 1, that it was solemnized, or at least published, before many witnesses, verses 9 and 10, Ye are witnesses. 1, that I have bought the estate. Whoever has it, or any part of it, mortgaged to them, let him come to me, and he shall have money according to the value of the land, which was computed by the number of years to the year of Jubilee, Leviticus 25, verse 15, when it would have returned, of course, to Elimelech's family. The more public the sales of estates are, the better they are guarded against frauds. 2, that I have purchased the widow to be my wife. He had no portion with her. What jointure she had was encumbered, and he could not have it without giving as much for it as it was worth, and therefore he might well say he purchased her, and yet, being a virtuous woman, he reckoned he had a good bargain. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, but a prudent wife is more valuable, is from the Lord as a special gift. He designed, in marrying her, to preserve the memory of the dead, that the name of Mahlon, though he left no son to bear it up, might not be cut off from the gate of his place, but by this means might be preserved, that it should be inserted in the public register that Boaz married Ruth, the widow of Mahlon, the son of Elimelech, which posterity, whenever they had occasion to consult the register, would take particular notice of. And this history being preserved for the sake of that marriage and the issue of it, that proved an effectual means to perpetuate the name of Mahlon, even beyond the thought or intention of Boaz, to the world's end. And observe that because Boaz did this honour to the dead, As well as this kindness to the living, God did him the honor to bring him into the genealogy of the Messiah, by which his family was dignified above all the families of Israel, while the other kinsman, that was so much afraid of diminishing himself and marring his inheritance by marrying the widow, has his name, family, and inheritance buried in oblivion and disgrace. A tender and generous concern for the honor of the dead and the comfort of poor widows and strangers, neither of which can return the kindness, Luke 14 verse 14, is what God will be well pleased with and will surely recompense. Our Lord Jesus is our Goel, our Redeemer, our everlasting Redeemer. He looked, like Boaz, with compassion on the deplorable state of fallen mankind. At a vast expense he redeemed the heavenly inheritance for us, which by sin was mortgaged and forfeited into the hands of divine justice, and which we could never have been able to redeem. He likewise purchased a peculiar people, whom he would espouse to himself, though strangers and foreigners, like Ruth, poor and despised, that the name of that dead and buried race might not be cut off forever. He ventured the marring of his own inheritance to do this, for though he was rich, yet for our sakes he became poor. But he was abundantly recompensed for it by his Father, who, because he thus humbled himself, hath highly exalted him, and given him a name above every name. Let us own our obligations to him, make sure our contract with him, and study all our days how to do him honor. Boaz, by making a public declaration of this marriage and purchase, not only secured his title against all pretenders, as it were by a fine with proclamations, but put honor upon Ruth, showing that he was not ashamed of her and her parentage and poverty, and left a testimony against clandestine marriages. It is only that which is evil that hates the light and comes not to it. Boaz called witnesses to what he did, for it was what he could justify and would never disown, and such regard was then had even to the contemned crowd, that not only the elders but all the people that were in the gate, passing and repassing, were appealed to, verse 9, and hearkened to, verse 11, when they said, "We are witnesses." Second, that it was attended with many prayers. The elders and all the people, when they witnessed to it, wished well to it, and blessed it, verses 11 and 12. Ruth, it should seem, was now sent for they speak of her, verse 12, as present, this young woman, and he having taken her to wife, they look upon her as already come into his house. And very heartily they pray for the new married couple. The senior elder, it is likely, made this prayer, and the rest of the elders with the people joined in it, and therefore it is spoken of as made by them all, for in public prayers, though but one speaks, we must all pray. Observe 1, marriages ought to be blessed and accompanied with prayer, because every creature and every condition are that to us, and no more, that God makes them to be. It is civil and friendly to wish all happiness to those who enter into that condition, and what good we desire, we should pray for from the fountain of all good. The minister who gives himself to the word and prayer, as he is the fittest person to exhort, so he is the fittest to bless and pray for those that enter into this relation. 2. We ought to desire and pray for the welfare and prosperity one of another, so far from envying or grieving at it. Now here, first, they pray for Ruth. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and Leah, that is, God make her a good wife and a fruitful mother. Ruth was a virtuous woman, and yet needed the prayers of her friends, that by the grace of God she might be made a blessing to the family she was come into. They pray she might be like Rachel and Leah, rather than like Sarah and Rebekah, for Sarah had but one son, and Rebekah but one that was in covenant. The other was Esau, who was rejected. But Rachel and Leah did build up the house of Israel. All their children were in the church, and their offspring was numerous. May she be a flourishing, fruitful, faithful vine by thy house side. Second, they pray for Boaz, that he might continue to do worthily in the city, to which he was an ornament, and might there be more and more famous. They desire that the wife might be a blessing in the private affairs of the house, and the husband a blessing in the private business of the town, that she in her place and he in his might be wise, virtuous, and successful. Observe, the way to be famous is to do worthily. Great reputation must be got by great merits. It is not enough not to do unworthily, to be harmless and inoffensive, but we must do worthily, be useful and serviceable to our generation. They that would be truly illustrious must in their places shine as lights. Third, they pray for the family, let thy house be like the house of Phares, that is, let it be very numerous, let it greatly increase and multiply, as the house of Phares did. The Bethlehemites were of the house of Phares, and knew well how numerous it was. In the distribution of the tribes, that grandson of Jacob had the honor which none of the rest had but Manasseh and Ephraim, that his posterity was subdivided into two distinct families, Hezron and Hamul, Numbers 26 verse 21. Now they pray that the family of Boaz, which was one branch of that stock, might in process of time become as numerous and great as the whole stock now was. Verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. Verse 14. And the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. Verse 15. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age, for thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. Verse 16. And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. Verse 17. And the women, her neighbours, gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Verse 18. Now these are the generations of Phares. Phares begat Hezron. Verse 19. And Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Amminadab. Verse 20. And Amminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon. Verse 21. And Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed. Verse 22. And Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. Here is 1. Ruth, a wife. Boaz took her, with the usual solemnities, to his house, and she became his wife. Verse 13. All the city, no doubt, congratulating the preferment of a virtuous woman, purely for her virtues. We have reason to think that Orpah, who returned from Naomi to her people and her gods, was never half so well preferred as Ruth was. He that forsakes all for Christ shall find more than all with him. It shall be recompensed 100-fold in this present time. Now Orpah wished she had gone with Naomi too, but she, like the other kinsmen, stood in her own light. Boaz had prayed that this pious proselyte might receive a full reward of her courage and constancy from the God of Israel, under whose wings she was come to trust, and now he became an instrument of that kindness, which was an answer to his prayer, and helped to make his own words good. Now she had the command of those servants with whom she had associated, and of those fields in which she had gleaned. Thus sometimes God raiseth up the poor out of the dust, to set them with princes. Psalm 113, verses 7 and 8. 2. Ruth a mother. The Lord gave her conception, for the fruit of the womb is his reward. Psalm 127, verse 3. It is one of the keys he hath in his hand, and he sometimes makes the barren woman, that had been long so, to be a joyful mother of children. Psalm 113, verse 9. Isaiah 54, verse 1. 3. Ruth still a daughter-in-law, and the same that she always was to Naomi, who was so far from being forgotten that she was a principal sharer in these new joys. The good women that were at the labour when the child was born congratulated Naomi upon it, more than either Boaz or Ruth, because she was the matchmaker, and it was the family of her husband that was hereby built up. See here, as before, what an air of devotion there was then attending the common expressions of civility among the Israelites. Prayer to God attended the marriage, verse 11, and praise to him attended the birth of the child. What pity it is that such pious language should either be disused among Christians or degenerate into a formality. Blessed be the Lord that has sent thee this grandson, verses 14 and 15. First, who was the preserver of the name of her family, and who, they hoped, would be famous because his father was so. Second, who would be hereafter dutiful and kind to her, so they hoped because his mother was so. If he would but take after her, he would be a comfort to his aged grandmother, a restorer of her life, and if there should be occasion, would have wherewithal to be the nourisher of her old age. It is a great comfort to those that are going into years, to see of those that descend from them growing up, that are likely, by the blessing of God, to be a stay and support to them, when the years come wherein they will need such, and of which they will say they have no pleasure in them. Observe, they say of Ruth that she loved Naomi, and therefore was better to her than 7 sons. See how God in his providence sometimes makes up the want and loss of those relations from whom we expected most comfort in those from whom we expected least. The bonds of love proved stronger than those of nature, and there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. So here there was a daughter-in-law better than an own child. See what wisdom and grace will do. Now here, the child is named by the neighbors, verse 17. The good women would have it called Obed, a servant, either in remembrance of the meanness and poverty of the mother, or in prospect of his being hereafter a servant, and very serviceable to his grandmother. It is no dishonour to those that are ever so well born to be servants to God, their friends, and their generation. The motto of the Prince of Wales is Ich diene, I serve. 2. The child is nursed by the grandmother, that is, dry-nursed, when the mother had weaned him from the breast, verse 16. She laid it in her bosom in token of her tender affection to it and care of it. Grandmothers are often most fond. 4. Ruth is hereby brought in among the ancestors of David and Christ, which was the greatest honour. The genealogy is here drawn from Phares, through Boaz and Obed to David, and so leads towards the Messiah, and therefore not an endless genealogy.